95% of all men and women over the age of 30 will never sprint again for the rest of their life.
I mean, we're active.
Well, you're in the 1%.
Now, whether or not this is true is one thing, but this viral clip lit a fire under me to get out there and start training my sprinting abilities again. His point comes across that most people will never sprint again in their lives, and this is not out of choice, but rather they cannot. They have lost the physical ability to sprint. So even as someone that I consider is very active, that goes to the gym multiple times a week, I don't actually ever push myself to top end speeds and for multiple rounds. So in this case, I hate to admit it, but he is right. In fact, he is so right that I probably, as someone in my mid-20s, I probably have not sprinted in 5 to 10 years. So besides the fact that in most everyday scenarios, you don't actually need to do anything more than a jog, the most common excuse is that sprinting will get you injured. The only reason that this is true is because you never actually train that movement. It's very unlikely that you're coming from the opposite direction, as in you sprint too much and you have accumulated too much overuse injuries from sprinting. That rumor that you will get injured from sprinting is basically the running equivalent of if you lift too heavy, you will get injured. And at this point, we all know that is not true. It's picking the wrong weight. It's lifting it with the wrong technique. It's doing it too frequently, not ever giving yourself to build up to it. All of these factors lead to getting injured while lifting heavy, and I believe it is the same situation when it comes to sprinting. So from there, I did a personal assessment on my situation, specifically my sprinting ability, my conditioning, my power output, and where can I fit sprinting into my already busy training week? Well, if you're someone that has not sprinted for years, the best way to get started is by doing hill sprints. First off, when you're doing hill sprints, the protocols are much more manageable. Something like 5 to 30 seconds all out for a limited number of sets. That is much more manageable as someone reintroducing cardio into their routine rather than saying, hey, go out there and run 5 miles. Now, obviously, I know those are training for different qualities, but for someone getting back into conditioning work, one choice is significantly more apparent. Also, with the angle of the hill, there is less eccentric loading than on flat grounds. Think of going up the stairs. You will have more of that concentric tension where you lift your foot up and then push away. Something with high eccentric loading is going down a hill where your front of your foot has to travel even further before contacting the ground. Now, think about that. What is the opposite of going down a hill? Well, it's going up a hill. The distance your foot has to travel is less than on a flat ground and definitely less than downhill, which will expose you to less frequent lengthened positions. So basically, by doing hill sprints instead of flat ground sprints, you're less likely to get injured, and the fatigue you generate on a weekly basis will be lower, which will allow you to train again sooner. If you are someone that is already in shape, hills will still have a huge benefit, such as reinforcing better sprinting mechanics, as the hill teaches you to strike with your feet under you while having your knees bent and maximally using your muscles to be as efficient as possible, rather than being in this overstriding position where your feet is way out in front of you with minimal knee bend, almost like a stiff leg run or a minimal knee bend running motion. It allows you to build that high power capacity, and eventually, as you prepare towards whatever season of sport you're doing, you can transition back to sprinting on flat grounds with more power and less chance of having overuse injuries. So for me, the way that I have been doing it is roughly on a 15-degree incline hill angle, then doing 50 meters up the hill, which takes me about, say, 12 to 15 seconds. And then on this day, I did 15 total sets of this. So what I mean is sprint up as hard as I can, not holding back at all, then walking down slowly. That's 1. And then doing that 15 total times. Realistically, walking down is probably a 30 to 60 second break. and then immediately when I get to the start line, I turn around and go. I can't allow my brain to start going back into that thinking mode. No logical person wants to sprint as hard as they can when their heart rate is through their roof. They can hear their heart pounding, and also their legs are trembling at the same time. Trust me, I squatted 675 pounds before, and my legs are absolutely smoked from doing these hills. There's a reason why they call hill sprints nature's squat rack. Then also, due to the repeated sets of this, you're put in this almost primal animalistic phase where you just don't have any thoughts. You are literally just trying to survive. And if you take a step back, that kind of makes sense. How does your body interpret you having to sprint every single minute besides being in survival mode? However, after you finish the workout, you really get this feeling of accomplishment and carefreeness as you were basically just put into this 30-minute, physically intense, but mentally meditative state. So for you at home, if you want to try this, I would start out with 5 sets of about 80% effort. So like 80 out of 100 all out, up the steepest hill that you can find, and doing this once a week. Then, week after week, as this gets easier, build up the number of sets. Then, when you reach a high enough set count, consider going a slightly further distance. But the key is to not go too far, as at the end of the day, hill sprints is teaching you to exert yourself in like a 10 to 30 second distance. You don't want it to be a hill jog. Also, depending on where you live, this is surprisingly hard to find a hill that is steep, but also safe so you don't get hit by cars, and also the right distances. So do your research on forums. There's plenty of people that already do hill sprints. And if not, then try out an app called All Trails. This is basically like Yelp reviews, but for running spots. And then you can also look at the elevation changes to get an understanding of where is a good hill sprint spot on a trail. If not, you can also look on Google Maps or Google Earth. So this wraps up training day number 4. I'll see you all on training day number 5, where we hammer the upper chest with some incline dumbbell pressing.